Alright, in this video we're going to be talking about the overview of purpose, design, and studies. Now, since this video has been created after I've already taught it, remember that the key word is research. Alright, that's what our key word is research. And that's what this whole video and the next couple videos to follow is going to be about. So let's get started. Alright, what we have here is a research cycle. Notice that it's a cycle, circle, you get the idea. Alright, now a couple things I want to bring to your attention is notice all the arrows. Okay, there's actually no starting point and no ending point to this research cycle. And the reason behind that is because of the fact that when it comes to research, you can start in many different areas. Meaning, let's say if I had a question. Well, the question that I have will drive what kind of research I'm going to have, meaning the design of it, which will drive how I collect the research. Okay, now let's do another one. Let's say if I started with just collecting information about something. Okay, I don't necessarily have a question, but I just want to collect some information. Now from there, once I get the info, then of course I would analyze it, then I would report, and then maybe my report would then have a question attached to it. And so just really this entire research cycle is just kind of an overview of how research is collected. All right, moving on. Observational study, study that focuses around certain characteristics of a population. Experimental study, study that involves an experiment. Now, things I want to pay attention with observational study, and that is study conducted through a survey. Okay, in other words, let me just type this in. In other words, you are observing, not changing anything. Okay, pretty simple. Now, with an experimental study, you are changing something. Meaning, if I was to have an experiment of mice, now if I was just observing mice in a cage, then you would say, okay, this is an observational study. But if you start changing the problem, like, okay, now I'm going to feed the mice, I don't know, potato chips. Well, it's now experimental because now I am imposing a change on that, on those participants. Let's keep going. Jonas wanted to open an ice cream shop in his local hometown. In order to be successful, he wants to information about ice cream habits. He creates a flyer. All right. So right in there, word association, flyer. Okay. So is this an observational experimental study? Now, is he actually changing anything? Meaning, is he changing the eating habits of the people of his hometown? The answer is no. So he's not changing anything. The answer is going to be observational. Moving on. A treatment. A treatment usually refers to an experimental study, and it is what the research is doing to the subjects. Okay, or in other words, what is the researcher changing about the environment? Now, the variable of interest is what the researcher is trying to get the subjects to accomplish. In other words, trying to answer the question. All right. Now, of course, feel free to pause these videos because I am going relatively quick here. A researcher is conducting an experiment involving high school students. In the experiment, students are studying an hour a day for an upcoming test. While I listen to different types of music, country, rap, jazz, classical music is being used in the experiment. So is this example of observational or experimental study? Well, it says right here is that country, rap, jazz, classical music is being used. Okay, and so, or if you want to keep reading, students are studying an hour a day for an upcoming test while listening to different types of music. Things are changing here, so the answer is going to be experimental study. Okay, because the researcher is imposing a change on the students as in their music. Now, what is the treatment of the experiment? The treatment of the experiment is going to be the different, that's spell it right, types of music. I don't think I still spell. Oh, I'll put too many. There it is. Different types of music. Okay, that is the treatment. Now, what is the variable of interest? Meaning, what is the researcher trying to determine in this particular experiment? And that is going to be the uh, students' test scores. So what is variable interest? Well, the teacher just wants to know what the test scores are going to be. Okay? Now, the worksheet that I gave you for this lesson is this one right here. I'm not going to go over all of it, but I'm just going to go over some of it. Research cycle shows no obvious ending or starting points. What does this mean? It means that you can start anywhere on the cycle. And there's no ending point, so that means research constantly changing. And of course, once you change something, then sure enough, it's going to change everything, and you might have to redo your research. All right, moving on. In your own words, I'm not going to answer that. You guys can do that. You can go back to the video here. All right, let's look at this. Radio rating services sometimes collect data on listenership by asking participants to record the date, time, and station they listen to the radio. Other ratings services distribute monitoring service. Okay, whatever. Students can still participate about their listening habits. All right. So basically, in short, what's going on is a survey. Okay, a survey is where the radio stations are rating when their audience is listening to the music. So, or in other words, it's asking. So once they're asking, you know it's going to be observational. And of course, how do you know? It's asking, so you can actually say it's a survey. Okay. Remember, survey is when you are just observing, not changing. Moving on. 17-year-old student designed a science fair project with 72 mice randomly assigned to 3 groups: hard rock music, Mozart, and no music at all. The mice in the first 2 groups were exposed to music 10 hours a day, 3 times a week, all of the groups. Go ahead and keep reading. I'm not going to waste video time on this. It already says it's an experimental study. And of course, whenever you're dealing with mice, more than likely is you're dealing with observationals or with an experimental study. Now, what is the treatment? Okay, the treatment is the different music. The different music. What is the variable of interest? Well, if you keep reading, it is their maze time. So the treatment would be the different music that is being imposed on the mice, and the variable of interest is, okay, let's see how fast the mice can run through the maze. All right. Mrs. Johnson teaches American history and wants to help her students in their best on exams. After failing to find research on, she decided to conduct her own research. She flipped a coin for each student in her classes. If the coin lands heads up, the student took a multiple choice test. If the coin landed tails up, the student received a full fill in the blank test. Okay, now reading this, she flipped a coin and the student took a multiple choice test or a fill in the blank exam. The teacher, Mrs. Johnson, is actually changing, imposing a change on the students. So right then and there, it's experimental. And how do you know? Because different students took different tests. If it's an experimental study, what is the treatment? The treatment is the type of test. All right. So type of test. What is variable of interest? Student scores or test scores. Now, the advantages or disadvantages of teacher's plan is kind of a throwaway question I just asked. The advantages is a student that gets a fill in the blank test may have actually done better with multiple choice and vice versa, so those are some advantages or disadvantages. Last one. In a world history, Mr. McDonald had a similar concern. He decided, however, to ask his students. He put a question at the bottom of the exam: which do you prefer, multiple choice, fill in the blank questions. Afterward, Mr. McDonald tallied the results. All right, so he's not changing anything. He just put a question at the bottom of the exam. So in other words, he is surveying them. So it is observational. And if it's experimental, what is the treatment? We don't need to know that. What is the variable interest of class or each case? He wants to know which students score better on a test, and what are the advantages and disadvantages. Once again, in this, there's not really any. I guess one, you would say that if the students ended up wanting multiple choice, but then there was that one student that wanted fill in the blank, then that's a disadvantage to that one student. But anyway, that's the overview of research. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.